This is page 1 of Ms. Cavuto's study guide. First two problems are solving systems by the graphing method. First thing you're going to have to do is put both of the equations in slope-intercept form. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So if you take the first equation and you solve this for y, start out by subtracting x on both sides. So then you'll get 2y on the left side. And so, since I want it in slope-intercept form, I'm going to put my x term first. So this is going to be negative x minus 4. Then to get y by itself, divide everything by 2. So this simplifies to y equals negative 1/2 x minus 2. So negative 1/2 is my slope. Negative 2 is my y-intercept. So to graph this, I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is negative 2. And then I'm going to go down 1 over 2. Down 1 over 2. Because my slope is negative 1/2. So this is the graph for y equals negative 1/2 x minus 2. And then you're going to have to do the same thing for the second equation. So the second equation is negative 2x equals negative 4 plus y. So to get y by itself, you would simply add 4 to both sides. So now I have y all by itself on the right-hand side. And then the left-hand side is just negative 2x plus 4. So my slope is negative 2, and 4 is my y-intercept. So I'm going to start at my y-intercept, which is 4. And since my slope is negative 2, I'm going to go down 2 over 1. Down 2 over 1. So you can see that those two lines are intersecting right here at 4, negative 4. So that is your answer for number 1. Number 2 is the same way. You have to start out by putting both of these equations in slope-intercept form. So starting out with the first equation, 3y minus 3 equals x. Start by adding 3 to both sides. So now you have 3y equals x plus 3. And then divide everything by 3. So on the left-hand side, you have y equals, and then the right-hand side can be simplified to 1/3 x plus 1. So your slope is 1/3, and your y-intercept is 1. So you're going to start at 1, and then you're going to go up 1 over 3. So here is the line for y equals 1/3 x plus 1. Okay, then you're going to take your second equation, 12 equals 2x plus 3y. And the first thing you're going to do is subtract 2x from both sides. So on the right-hand side, I have 3y. And since I want this in slope-intercept form, I'm going to write this as negative 2x plus 12. Then to finish this off, divide everything by 3. So now on the right side, you got y equals, and the left side simplifies to negative 2/3 x plus 4. So your y-intercept is 4. Your slope is negative 2/3. So that means you're going to go down 2 over 3. So starting at 4, go down 2 over 3, and you'll see that these lines intersect at 3, 2. So that is your answer for number 2. They intersect at x equals 3, y equals 2. So that's how you solve systems using the graphing method. The next section is using the substitution method, and since there is not enough room, I am going to put all of my work on a separate sheet of paper. So using the substitution method, you have to either isolate the x variable, so get x equals something, or you have to isolate the y variable. So you want y equals something. So looking at number 3, I could start out with the second equation and solve that for x. So if x minus 2y equals negative 14, I could get x by itself just by adding 2y to both sides. So now I know that x equals negative 14 plus 2y. So that's step 1, is to get either x equals something or y equals something. And in this case, it was easier to get x equals. So starting with the second equation, I added 2y to both sides. So now I know that x equals negative 14 plus 2y. So since I did not use the first equation, I'm going to write that next. So negative x minus 5y equals negative 21. And since I know what x equals, I'm going to be substituting in for x. So if I substitute in for x, the negative sign still stays there. But instead of x, I'm going to write negative 14 plus 2y. And then I'm going to copy the rest. Minus 5y equals negative 21. So you have a lot of negatives in this problem. So distribute the negative. A negative times a negative is a positive. So you'll have 14 minus 2y minus 5y equals negative 21. Combine like terms. 14 minus 7y equals negative 21. Then subtract 14 from both sides. So negative 7y equals negative 35. And negative 35 divided by negative 7 is positive 5. So now I know that y equals 5. Zoom out. So if y equals 5, I could plug that back in here to figure out what x equals. So if x equals negative 14 plus 2y, that's what I know from the first step. And I know that y is 5, I'm going to substitute that in. And 2 times 5 is 10, and negative 14 plus 10 is negative 4. So my answer to number 3 is x equals negative 4, y equals 5, and you could write that as an ordered pair, negative 4, 5. All right, number 4. Again, remember your first step. Your first step is to get either x equals or y equals. So I'm going to start with the first equation this time, and I'm going to solve that for x. So the first equation is x plus 4y equals negative 12. If I want to get x by itself, I'm going to subtract 4y from both sides. So here, x equals negative 12 minus 4y. I now have x equals something, which is my first step. Since I didn't use the second equation yet, I'm going to copy that down and use it in my substitution step. So if I know what x equals, I'm going to substitute in for x. So I'm going to take negative 6, and now instead of x, I'm going to write negative 12 minus 4y. And then I have minus 2y equals 6. And then I solve this equation for y. So distribute first. 6 times 12 is 72. And since a negative times a negative is a positive, that'll be positive 72. 6 times 4 is 24. And since a negative times a negative is a positive, that's positive 24y. And then minus 2y equals 6. Combine like terms. Positive 24 minus 2 is 22y. Then you're going to subtract 72 from both sides. So 22y equals negative 66. And then divide both sides by 22, and you'll get y equals negative 3. And since you now solve for y, you can now get x. So remember all the way up here we said x equals negative 12 minus 4y. Well, if I know that y is negative 3, I could plug that in and solve for x. So 4 times 3, oh sorry, almost forgot the negative sign. So y is negative 3, so you have to plug in negative 3 here. So a negative times a negative is a positive, so I have negative 12 plus 12, and that just gives me 0. So x is 0, y is negative 3. So I'm going to write that on the paper. X is 0, y is negative 3, and you could write that as an ordered pair, 0, negative 3. Then the last substitution example is number 5. So remember step 1, you want to get either x equals or y equals something so that you can substitute. So I'm going to take the second equation and solve for y. So I have negative 2x plus y equals 5. So if I want to get y by itself, I'm going to add 2x to both sides. So now y equals 5 plus 2x. So now I have y equals something. And since I didn't use that first equation, I'm going to write it, negative 5x plus 2y equals 12. And I'm going to make my substitution step. Since I know what y equals, I'm going to substitute in for y. So I have negative 5x plus 2, and instead of y, I'm going to write 5 plus 2x. And this equals 12. So I'm going to solve this for x. Start by distributing. Then combine like terms. Negative 5x plus 4x is negative 1x. Subtract 10 on both sides. And then divide by negative 1. So x equals negative 2. To get y, I'm going to use that equation all the way back up at the top. So y equals 5 plus 2x. And since I know that x equals negative 2, I'm going to substitute that in and solve for y. So 2 times negative 2 is negative 4, and 5 and minus 4 is 1. So x is negative 2, y is 1. I'm going to write that on my paper. And then write it as an ordered pair. So there you go. There's 1 through 5.